Hey guys, this is Stefan Tollenaar, and nice that you're watching. This is my first attempt to do an online introduction to the course that we've started, or actually that we're starting in a week from now, the 9th of February, and it's about Richard Rohr's book, Breathing Underwater. So last Saturday night we had a short get together, or it was fun. We had some pizza, we had some people there. It was at someone's house. We had a really good time. I did a short introduction, and it was suggested that I would go into depth a little bit more to make it a little bit more substantial in a way. I'm very conceptual in the way that I explain some of the material. Conceptual is the language of the heart, I would say, because the brain needs facts and information, and it likes to structure certain things in a logical manner that makes sense. The heart is more creative and more conceptual, or people who have a creative mind find it easier to see patterns, or to speak in parables, maybe even, or pictures or images. And so there's a creative side of me that will try to explain principles, especially spiritual principles, that the mind finds hard to digest. And that's a really good beginning of where we want to go with this, because at the end of the day, we are not just rational beings, but we have different layers, if you will. And just go through some of my slides that I used last week to explain a little bit of what it is we mean when we talk about Christian spirituality. So there's Christian spirituality, and there's different interpretations of that. You've got people who are very attached to a more traditional biblical worldview. I would say that's not my approach, because I see that spirituality usually goes beyond some of the boundaries that a very systematic, dogmatic approach would be able to offer. So I speak in light of my convictions, which is that Jesus Christ was the full manifestation of God here on earth in a human form. So that by itself already has some limitations, because God is bigger than us people. God is, well, that's the thing. When we try to explain God, we only can go so far. We are very, very limited, and yet there is a structure, or there's a pattern that we can find in knowing God, because we were made in His image. And so when we think about who God is, we need to keep in mind that we were created in His image, and that, in my opinion, Jesus was the full expression, the most perfect, the most complete, the most whole expression of God in bodily form, in human form. And so when we talk about breathing underwater, what we essentially want to do is, what is limiting us to breathe underwater? What is limiting us to be a full expression of the divine? I don't want to go into too much of the esoteric stuff, even though I have a whole, there's a whole framework there as well for that, like the supernatural. How are we to interact with the supernatural? But that's not what we are going to be dealing with today. It's very practical. I think just to understand our relationship with the divine and our connection with the spiritual. So that's what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to share my screen because I think that will help you to see my PowerPoint presentation. Let's see if I can get to my PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes that's a challenge by itself. Okay, so this was my invitation banner. It's it's a bit esoteric, I guess, in the way it looks, because that's, at the end of the day, that's my motivation to really dive into that, but not now. So when I say exploring the mystery of true Christian spirituality, I want to talk about the cosmic exchange that happens when we interact with the divine, or when we imitate Christ in a way. So when we talk about the X, cosmic exchange, the X in the middle there would be X for Christ, because I'm a believer that Christ is the universal truth, that Christ is the Spirit of God expressed through Jesus, but he was there from the very beginning. And that's what the Bible also says. The Christ was there from the very beginning, and nothing that was created without him. So he was there, and he is the Christ, or the cosmic Christ, the Christ consciousness, if you will, is an awareness that the Christ, the Spirit of God, has always been there, starting from the foundation of the earth, and even before that. But we are limited in our understanding, and we have to deal with the stuff that we can see, and this world is our playground. So I want to share with an open heart, and I hope that when you join us for the course, you are willing to come and share with an open heart and listen with an open mind, because some of these concepts or ideas or beliefs, these structures, might be unfamiliar with you. And I just want to help you I think we need to help each other understand a bit more to move forward. I think we're all stuck from our own limited understanding, and let's find a way to get unstuck. So when you read this, when you see this, it's a fun little thing to start off with, because this sentence, if you will, can be read many different ways, or a few different ways. God is nowhere. If you're an atheist, or if you don't believe in a spiritual realm, if you don't believe in anything but this material world, then you might have a conviction that God is nowhere. He's nothing. He's no one. There's no knowing him, and there's no interacting with him or with it. You could also read this as God is now here, which is almost the opposite, because wherever you are, anywhere, anyone, or anything could be an expression of God, and God could reveal himself through that, or his presence could be experienced wherever you are. Well, that's another way of looking at life. It's another awareness. It's another conscious awareness. Now, I'm not even saying that I believe either one of these two. I'm just saying there are different ways of interacting with, or you can have a different worldview, let's call it that, but your worldview determines the way you interact with society, with the material world around you. I think there's actually more ways of looking at the world, or your worldview. So we talked about this last week, and I just want to go over it real quickly, because I might be able to give some more examples. So you could say in the red, so on the top here, you see in the red letters, it says nowhere, nothing, no one. So this would be a worldview. God is nowhere, God is nothing. There's no one that I can find that will reveal me anything more, or that is going to reveal some of that mystery. There's no mystery. There's only cause and effect. It's only what I do that will, or not do, that will affect my circumstances, or what the people around me will do. So there's that. If you have the blue on the left, you would see God is, God is somewhere, God is something. So this is it's a worldview I think that a lot of us hold, because if you believe that there's something out there that will help you, that will be the thing that will save me. Or if, like superstition, if I say something like, okay, well, I've never been sick during winter, then people usually knock on wood, because then they believe that if they don't knock on wood, they jinx their luck and something terrible will happen to them. But if they knock on natural wood, then that thing that they do will prevent that from happening. So there's many different things. I think many different religions or many different people have rituals, and those rituals are the thing that I'm talking about. So if I do something, if I have something, if I am something in particular or specific, then I will be experiencing luck or blessing or the favor of God. I will be interacting with that divine nature. All right, so it's a very rational approach because it's very disconnected from who you are, but yet you can interact. It's an external thing, but you can still interact and become part of that. So when we move down to the green, to the somewhere, someone, it's a different worldview, because the worldview there would be like, there is someone out there that when I interact with that someone, I will experience the divine. I think a lot of us treat Jesus that way. If I can interact with Jesus, if I was only part of that story, he would put me in touch with the divine. Or I think many different religions have their own teacher or their own savior in a way. So we have a person who reveals the divine qualities, and if I become part of his story, I will be saved. So this is a very Christian, a very monotheistic worldview. And then we have the yellow one on the right, and it would be God is everywhere in everyone, and I can experience him by interacting with anyone or everyone. I mean, everyone and everywhere. So this is a little bit more exciting, I would say, because it's different. And yet we all, especially Christians, we actually all believe this, because if we become part of God's family and you become a child of God, then also you are part of the divine nature of God. You become part of his family, but then also God lives in you. You are part of him, and his divine nature becomes part of you. So this is interesting, because this has much more to do with how you interact, not just because you feel that you have a divine nature, but that you understand that everyone could have a divine nature. All the people around you are part of the divine. Everyone can express and experience or reveal something of God's nature to you. So by loving one another, by loving other people, you get to know more of God, because he is revealed through you in a different way than through someone else. So it's a bigger picture, it's a bigger story, and you realize that that there's more out there than just you, and you are not the center of this story or of this world, of this universe. And then in the middle, I want to go and suggest that there's people out there who believe that God could be, or the divine could be, anyone in anything and everywhere. And so this is a bit less of a focus, because if you talk about God as somewhere or something, there's a focus there. If you say God is somewhere, someone, it's a focus. It's focus on a person. If you say God could be everywhere in everyone, it's still focus. It's less of a focus, but it's still focus. If you say God is anywhere and it could be anything and anyone, it's a very rich way of looking at life, because everything you do becomes a divine act. everything that you do or anyone that you meet could reveal something of God, but it's also quite confusing because then every truth could be some truth. So anything could be true, and it could be true anywhere, anywhere where you find it. But that also would suggest that in evil, God is revealed. So in Hitler or in hatred, God is revealed. Um, and I have a little bit of a problem with that, but it is a way of looking at the divine nature. And so I would like to suggest that there is a healthy way of looking at the divine and interacting with the divine. So if we talk about the occult and doing rituals, harming people, and to gain power and control, I would say that is an unhealthy expression of spirituality. I would not suggest anyone to go there. If we would talk about loving one another to experience the divine, I would suggest that's a very good way to go. So when we talk about Christian spirituality, I think Jesus revealed something that we can understand more clearly when we talk about this, but it's got to do with loving one another, and it has to do with seeing your neighbor as yourself, or loving your neighbor as yourself and treating him in that way. Now, if you are wondering where you are in this process, in this picture, then I want to suggest that there are different personality types that are attracted to these different categories. So we're going to work with the DISC personality profiles because it helps me. I understand that language, and I'm very comfortable explaining different traits, different energy, different emotions, different habits based on the DISC profile. But just to give you a general idea of what that means is I was taught and come to understand that there are 4 basic human emotions, like the 4 basic ones. Some people, they have this anger, or this not even suppressed anger, but it's just the energy. They want to do stuff. They want to change things. They want to not just achieve things, but they want to challenge things. They see something and they want to challenge it. So it's more like, if I go down one more, so people who are who are rational and physical, they have focus and they know right from wrong, and so justice becomes a big theme for them. But also, when there's injustice, their emotional response to that would be anger and wanting to challenge the status quo, or wanting to challenge and change that injustice. So that's a really helpful emotion. I think sometimes we don't want to allow people to be angry, especially in public settings. We find anger disturbing because we don't know how to deal with it. We feel threatened by it, but anger actually activates us into action. So that's good. Happiness on the right would be a rejoicing expression or attitude. We like to rejoice. We like to rejoice the good stuff and celebrate the good stuff. So that means we need to ignore some of the bad stuff. And so people who are more in that realm of happiness and rejoicing, they are willing to ignore a lot of injustice. And they focus on the good stuff because that's where they feel happy. That's where they get their energy. That's where they get their fix. So yes, I'm using the word fix because I think it's also an addiction. On both ends of the spectrum, the anger can become an addiction, and that feels good, and the happiness can become an addiction as well. So people on the right, because I'm going to make a distinction between the left and the right, the blue and the yellow. The yellow on the right, their theme would be more about grace. So they gravitate towards the theme of grace. And everything is given, nothing is earned. You are loved just the way you are. There's nothing there that you need to change or that you can earn. It's all grace. It's God's divine blessing. God is love, and you only have to receive and accept his love. That's the story on the right. You see that? I'm going to go to the left because there's mercy, and mercy is very rational in its approach, because it says, hey, there was injustice and there is wrongdoing, but I'm going to forgive you. And so mercy doesn't ignore, it doesn't ignore evil or wrongdoing, but it will forgive when there is repentance, when there is remorse. So mercy is extended. It's an option, because that at the end of the day also is justice. Justice is served when people change, when people are, when injustice is confronted, then there is repentance, so there might be change and transformation. So mercy is extended on the left, and that's a way out. It's like it's the holy way out of the anger, and something else can replace that. So why is there sadness on the left bottom? Well, I think so these bottom words, the scary and the sorry, or sadness and fear, they are emotions that people experience when they feel that they are judged, when they are threatened, when an external force is invading their space or interacting with them. There is someone out there or something out there that is coming into their safety zone, into their comfort zone. And so sadness is an expression of that, and fear is an expression of that. I'm going to go into depth on these, but I just want you to realize that you can be in either one of these four areas and be really comfortable with that. There's actually a lot of people who feel comfortable with sadness. They actually love to experience and to feel that. It makes them feel alive in a way. It is their way of interacting with emotion. And fear in the same way. Some people, and we all know that, horror movies or haunted houses, we love that excitement sometimes. Not always, and not everyone likes that, but some people really get a fix out of that. They're addicted to it in a way because it makes them feel alive. It makes them feel that they are part of this world and interacting. So when we put these colors into focus, I just want to explain that we have different levels of awareness. And this is really important because this is where we need to establish balance in our life, and it will help us to see the world both from a more material point of view, but also from a spiritual point of view. So this is my interpretation of how the different layers interact. And I'm quite convinced after 25 years of dealing with this subject that this is the most clear picture that I have come across. This is last year for me. This was a journey of 25 years was actually concluded by this image. I have been looking for truth and trying to explain and understand truth and spiritual truth since I was 16 years old. And last year, when I was 40, I turned 40. This is the image that helped me the most in wrapping it up all together, in really getting a final image of how these levels interact with each other. Because there, in my opinion, and this is drawn from the words of Jesus when he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That was my beginning point of exploring this theme. The outer circle, the red circle, I would suggest is our body. It's our strength. It's the physical world. It's how we interact with the material world, with on earth, just everything we can touch, feel, smell, taste, see, all this stuff. It's how we interact with this world. So the blue is our mind, our rational, cognitive, analytical ability to judge right from wrong, good from bad, tall from short, thick from thin. And so we can build things. We can, in our mind, we can plan, we can organize, and we can build. And that's very healthy. We need to do that if we want to create something sustainable. And even if we want to create something good or beautiful or creative, there has to be a process in place. So the blue is very helpful to do that. And then the green. So what's the green circle? The soul. Well, the soul is where we make commitments and choices. The soul is where we say, yes, this is where I belong. This is what I will make my own. So we can have a lot of ideas in our mind, but if we never commit to it, if we never really choose fully, like getting married, you can have a lot of girlfriends, but there's at a certain point you make a covenant, a vow, you commit to one person in marriage, and that is going to be the place where you belong. That's the family, the unit that you can extend yourself from. But that could also be a company. You could say, I'm going to create a company. You could have many different business ideas, but at a certain point, there is this one thing that you say, this is where I'm going to commit to. I am going to choose to commit to establish something of this particular order, and you will, and it's going to be your legacy. It's your destiny, your calling. That is something that you want to contribute. But there's a commitment, a covenant involved, and that's something who you are, and it's an expression of what you want to accomplish. So the yellow would be the heart. So the heart is not our physical heart, it's not even emotional heart. So the heart is more the creative side of our brain. So it's more where we dream. It's where we have a vision of how things could be. It's seeing into the future, but also experiencing in your, not even in your mind, but in your heart, you can experience and interact with something and know deep down inside, this is good or this is bad. This is beauty or this is ugly. This makes me feel great or I'm disgusted with this. The heart is the center of where all these emotions, all these images, and all these thoughts become more abstract. And they become images, but we don't always even know. It's probably more symbol. They become symbols, like, and that symbol then represents a certain ideal. And so it's really difficult sometimes to interpret those dreams or those visions, those symbols that we hold dear, because it's not the same kind of language that we use when we talk or when we use words to articulate things. It's more imagery, it's more abstract, it's more conceptual in a way. And we need to learn how to tap into that, because that's where the nerve center of what we truly believe and what we truly want to accomplish, that's where we get those inspirations. So the yellow is the heart of who we are. And then in the center of that is actually our true spiritual connection. It's the divine nature of who we really are, children of God, an instrument of peace. We are connected. It's like electricity, maybe even. You can have a vacuum cleaner without connecting it to the socket, or how do you call that, to the electricity. So you can push that thing around, but you're not going to clean up after. It's not going to be functional. So this vacuum cleaner needs to be plugged in. It has to have this electrical current to produce value for you. Or even a light. If there's a light in your house, but it's not connected to electricity, it's not going to do any much good. And that's exactly how we are as human beings. If you're not connected to the divine energy, to the source, then your dreams, I don't even know if your engine is going to run. I don't even know if you're going to be actually producing anything of value that is that is true to who you really are and how you could express that through your mind and your body and your commitment. So you need a source, and that's where your heart is inspired and connected to produce dreams and visions that then you can commit to and organize and build. And so we need to be connected. This is the full extent of who you are. If you're only operating on the red and blue level, on the rational and the practical level, then you're not connected to the source. You're not connected to who you truly are. So if we talk about the true self and the false self, then our true self starts in the center, in the divine, in the source. And if you're not connected, then you're not really your true self. You haven't discovered who you truly really are. So identity becomes a big deal in this topic, your true self and your false self. So I would suggest that everyone is connected, either really slightly or maybe more maturely in their spiritual growth. But it kind of looks like personality. You can see in someone's personality where they are fixed in one of these areas, where they are, where they gravitate towards, and what their pattern is. It becomes a pattern, a behavior that repeats itself and becomes, a personality profile. So a profile for a personality, it's more just something that you've come to either own and say, this is who I really am and this is my behavior and I can't really change it, or it's an addiction. And I'm here to suggest that we're all addicted to these behaviors because there's energy in that behavior. There's emotional charge, emotional leverage, and we notice that when we are when we're angry, people respond to that. When we're sad, people respond to that. When we are scared, people respond to that. Or when we're happy, people respond. And so what I would see in the Netherlands, we have a lot of red, a lot of blue, a lot of green, not so much yellow. And yellow would be, passion driven or passion. I would say the yellow would be passionate about stuff. We're not as Dutch people are very driven, but they're not passionate. They don't really have a dream, but we're very purposeful. I would say blue is more purposeful, and then the red would be more driven to make a change and to really challenge the status quo. And that's the Dutch are very progressive, even in the way they deal with the water that surrounds their little country. We want to challenge the fact that the land is only, that the ocean can take the land. So what we have done is we said, no, we're going to challenge the ocean and the sea, and we're going to build dikes, and we're going to take back some of that land. And so it's a very challenging, a very purpose-driven mentality. So Americans are way more passion-driven in their mental. They're very passionate, very more dream. The American dream. So the yellow is quite dominant, but also just the doing and challenging. But they come from a more happy place, a more yellow charged emotional awareness. And I think even that helps them to connect with the spiritual in a way. But then if you don't have the blue or you don't have the green so much, then you don't always have the rational capacity to make the right choices or to go after the right things, because you're judging, your mental awareness, your rational analytical process is not up to speed or not on full speed. I'm not judging America as a whole, but it's just a tendency that you can recognize in a culture or in different parts of a culture. I think Canada is very blue and green. I've done many different tests with people, especially DISC tests, and the blue and the green are very prominent in this culture. And I don't know if it's like suppressed anger, but I see that people in traffic actually have a lot of red, and they shout and they honk and they become really aggressive. But the main overall attitude of people is very rational and very committed to their own thing. And so it becomes a very small thing, but their own thing they're very committed to, and they're very rational, very intentional in their own thing. So I think it becomes like you've got all these different groups of people, very small different communities, who are all very attached and committed to their own thing, and they belong. So the green is a lot about belonging. They want to belong to a specific group. So you've got the beer group, you've got the ski group, people who like to go outdoors. You've got the Dutch group, or people who came from the Netherlands and they stick together, and the Chinese who stick together. So they all are. This is, I think, a very interesting view on Canada. It's a more liberal, I think, because I don't know. I know the Dutch are very progressive. I know Americans can be very conservative. And I think the Canadians usually associate themselves with being more liberal. So these attitudes, these all have, there is a logic to it, or a pattern to it, and there's also an output. It actually influences the way people interact with each other and accomplish different goals, or do different tasks. So I'm here to suggest that we need a balance. We need to balance and get unstuck. We got to get unstuck from our addictions, because if we are very, I'll just call it, with the colors, if we're very practical, very rational, and very committed to that, we sometimes miss the connection with the spiritual realm that really fulfills our true desires, our true needs for being a vessel for the Spirit to bring light into the world. I think that's our true calling. It's our true nature. Our nature is to express the character of God, the nature and character of God, of the divine, of source. So we've got to get connected with the source, but then how you express that could be very unique. It might be, not everyone is going to express God or the divine in the very exact same way. And I think that's what makes us beautiful. That's why diversity is so important, and why we need to embrace diversity, is that God could be expressed through everyone in every way that you can think of, that is whole and connected. So when I talked about that last week, I think Jesus he was connected. Jesus was fully connected with Source. So his life was light, and he was the light of the world. And so when you look at his life, what did that look like? Well, there was peace, there was joy, there was fruit in what he did. There was healing, there was freedom, there was friendship. So all these traits become what I would believe to be the divine nature of God. So where there is God, there must be freedom, there must be friendship, there must be peace and joy and deep, what does it say? Oh yeah, deep joy. So it's got to produce something. I think a lot of people, they say, yeah, I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus, but they don't produce any of this. And I think they're missing the point. They're not really connected with Source. They're looking at Jesus and saying, yeah, I like a piece of that. Give me some of that. But they're not actually wanting to follow Christ, to be a vessel or an instrument of peace and a vessel of love, and to really be connected. So at the end of the day, this is maybe too much for now, but we need to allow the Spirit to move through us. And what I think will happen then is we will start to desire things that are connected with God, with the divine. And when we then hold on to those desires and those dreams, when we commit to those things and we trust that we can make a difference, or that we can actually do something that will express that divine nature, then we will see things manifested in our life. Because we're not just alone in this, we're actually interconnected. So when we become part of this story, when we start to interact with this divine source, you will start to notice that all the other people who are also connected with this source, you're all moving in harmony with each other, and you're going to be meeting people. You're going to connect with people, and you're going to meet people that you otherwise wouldn't have met, and they are the right people at the right time, and you just know, wow, this was amazing. This wasn't just chance. This was designed. This was orchestrated. This is intentional. And so when you become connected with Source and you start to go with that flow, and you're going to commit yourself to that, you will become part of a pattern, or you will become part of a movement. And the movement is actually a restoration movement. That's why I call it transition. We're all in transition from being detaching from our false self and to attach to our true self, to our divine source, that I believe is an outside source, but it only moves from the inside out. I think it's bigger than us, but it moves through us. So we need to find that source. We need to connect to it. And our intuition is going to be restored because of that. This is what I believe, what I've experienced myself. Your intuition is going to be restored. Your influence is going to be restored. And I also believe there's a supernatural dimension to that, an influence, an authority, if you will, that surpasses your physical ability. So it goes beyond your physical ability. An influence, a power, or an impact that we can channel, or that we can release and have go through us. We will experience intimacy, soul, that's the soul level, because intimacy is a love and a connection and a belonging that is designed for us as human beings. So we need to, and it will restore that for us. We will be restored in this. We will get divine inspiration, our thoughts, words of wisdom, words of knowledge, or just creative ideas, maybe solutions to problems, innovative ideas that then we can produce and make a difference, bless one another, and really see this world change and be transformed into the image of what God intentionally, what his intention was with it. So this is what I believe is what we're working towards. And so this is, I'm inviting you guys into experiencing heaven on earth. Jesus said there's a very specific way, a very specific truth, and a very specific life. He says, if you want to experience heaven on earth, if you want to be in paradise, if you want to do this, then you got to follow me. You got to follow my example. So what Jesus did, he said, okay, these are the ground rules. If you want to do this, if you want to get rid of your false self, or you want to restore yourself into your true self, then this is how you do it. Just obey me, he said. Just do what I said. Do as I tell you, and be compassionate, or at least practice compassion, practice faithfulness, practice humility, and practice generosity. Because those are this is the way to get unaddicted, to get unstuck, to get unentangled. It's going to actually free you up. It's going to make you connected with Source. This is the way, the truth, and the life that Jesus was talking about. He was a expression, he was a full manifestation of that, but he didn't say, just believe in me and then everything will be okay. He said, no, follow me and then everything will be okay. So what he said is, well, let me put it this way. You can say, well, I believe in the moon. I can see, at night when it's dark, I see the moon. I'm a believer. But if you, it doesn't make you an astronaut, right? It doesn't make you an astronaut. And this is what I think is very frustrating within our Christian culture. A lot of people say they believe in Jesus, and they actually believe that he's the Son of God, he raised from the dead, and he died for their sin, but they don't follow him. They don't exercise, you know, the great commandment, which is to love one another. And how do you do that? He said, well, Jesus said, love God, but also your neighbor with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind and all of your strength. Now, I think these are the words that he might use if he was living today. And he would probably say, well, okay, just do this. Just be generous, be humble, be faithful, and be compassionate. And not just a little bit, but go to the full extreme, maybe even. Jesus was extreme. His generosity was extreme. His humility was extreme. His faithfulness was extreme. His compassion was extreme. So if we say we want to be followers of Jesus, that actually what we're saying is we want to be connected to the source. We want to be connected to Christ. The cosmic Christ is the source of all life. And because we're ignorant, we're limited in our understanding, and sometimes we're just insane, we're stupid. And I'm not saying I'm any different, but this is what I have come to realize, is we need to practice this. It doesn't come by itself. We need to make deliberate choices, intentional choices, to be generous, to be humble, to be faithful and compassionate. And then because of doing that, you will experience joy, peace, the goodness. You will experience all, freedom and fruitfulness, friendship and peace. So this is what we want to do. We want to be Christ incarnate. We want to be an expression of that cosmic consciousness, of that source that we see revealed in Jesus. So this is where we're going with the course. We want you to get unstuck. We want to get rid of our addictions, because our ego is just full of addictions. I'm just going to stop my screen so that you can see my face. This is where I'm really excited about this, because I believe we can do this. This is not something out of reach. This will restore our sanity, because we're going around in circles and circles. We're all stuck in a pattern of behavior because we need a fix. We need that happiness. We need to express our anger, or we want to feel alive. And so we do the thing that kind of gives us that quick energy. And so what I suggest is we go through a book by Richard Rohr. And this book is called Breathing Underwater. He talks about the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous. And what it does is it just first helps us to realize that we're all addicts to that fix, to the need of satisfaction. When we realize that, then we need to come to an understanding that there's a way out, and only by a higher force or a higher source, a higher power, that we can be rescued, or at least be freed from this. And that's where we need to surrender. And our ego doesn't like to surrender, because it says, no, I will do this. I can do it. I will be humble. I will be generous. I will be faithful. But that, by definition, is not humble. It's actually very prideful and arrogant. So we're going to talk about the addictions. We're going to talk about what is your preferred addiction. And then we're going to talk about how can we encourage each other as men, because I think it's the intention of this was to be a friendly men's gathering, to encourage each other to, first of all, see the speck. See the speck in your own eye. No, it's not a speck. It's like seeing the tree trunk in your own eye, as Jesus says it, so we can help each other to get rid of the speck in each other's eye, which means we're all blinded by our own ego. And there's a way to kind of expose our ego. And if there's a safe place where we feel comfortable to kind of talk about these things, you will be amazed that the moment you recognize the pattern of your ego, and you see where that is unhelpful and unhealthy even, and you see that there's another way, you will be actually excited to get started on this journey of, I would call it discipleship, but it's just spiritual growth. It's deliverance, it's sanity, it's actually being connected with Source and with each other. Because that's, if I believe in spiritual reality, then the only way that I think it's worth pursuing is not because of any supernatural power that we might be able to attract or achieve. No, it's about really being integrated with ourselves, being connected, fully connected, whole, as it were, with ourselves, with God, and with each other. Because I believe that's where change happens. That's where transformation happens. That's where something beautiful beautiful communities and exciting stuff happens, when people are actually united as one. I think that's the bigger picture here. So we need to first come to realize that we're disintegrated, we're disconnected, and then how do we get connected? And I hope that I can inspire you, motivate you, or challenge you to look at this, to join us in this journey of exploration. So look at the Facebook page for Cosmic Exchange. Look at the events that we're doing. I think the next we're going to go through a book by Richard Rohr called Breathing Underwater, which talks about this thing in depth, and we just want to. It's just going to be our starting point, but we hope to do many more events that kind of help us to do this. So if you want to be part of this, sign up. Let us know and show up to the meeting or to these gatherings. We just want to have hang out, talk, share, listen, and have eat a little bit and have some fun. So be welcome. I think there's a little just feel free to come and experience this with us. I hope you come. All right, see you later. Bye bye.